Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough, and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Wow, it's good to be back together with you guys for another episode.
Yes.
So, missed you guys.
Yeah, now Marianne, you have been moving since we last talked, and you and Chad are settling into your new home. How's that going?
It's going good. It's had its challenges, as any move does, but we're super excited to be here, and we're settling in as a family, getting to know our neighbors, and excited.
Yeah, now for our listeners, Marianne simply moved from one side of Dallas to the other, but that's kind of like moving from, I don't know, the eastern United States to the Midwest, because that's a pretty big distance. How are your kids handling the changes?
They're handling it good. We're excited about all of the fast food restaurants nearby. That's the first thing we scoped out. Our new neighborhood has a catch and release pond and bike trails. So they're super excited about that, and they're ready to meet neighbors and find new friends. But we're loving it. We're really excited. There's a Whataburger one block up. And for those of you that do not live in Texas, Whataburger is the greatest burger ever.
Oh, I am with you.
I'm not going to argue with you guys out there that like In-N-Out Burger. Whataburger wins in Texas.
Whataburger wins in most places, but it is a very divided audience. Josh, where are you on that one? Do you have a preference?
Because In-N-Out is like a delicacy because I only get it when I go out west. So I've had Whataburger several times, and I'm going to have to vote In-N-Out. But my local favorite that is kind of in line with those is Hugh Babies, or as Jim Weidman would say, "You want to go down and get us a Hugh Babies?" So yeah.
Well, for all of our listeners, it's been really good to have Josh as a co-host for the few episodes we've had. Mary and I are kicking him out because he doesn't like Whataburger now.
He's out.
He's gone.
I didn't say I didn't like it, but if I had a choice and had to vote, I'm going In-N-Out. And speaking of voting, our next guest for this week is Jefferson Bethke, and he has to suffer for the Lord and do his ministry in Hawaii.
Yes.
It's really hard to feel sorry for a man like that, but it just made me think of like it's a place I'd like to vacation, but he gets to live there all the time. And speaking of vacation, I'm just curious, like, what's your favorite vacation spots? Maybe I'll pose it this way: a place that you have been that was your favorite vacation spot, and a place that you have yet to visit that you would like to.
Ooh, well worded there. Marianne, you want to jump in first? Or?
Sure. First and foremost, Colorado. Our family has a second home in Colorado, our extended family. And so we get to go 2 or 3 times a year to the mountains. I love Colorado in the summer because I live in Texas, and it's literally 105 today in my city. So normally we get to go in the summer for 2 weeks, and the high is 85, and it rains every afternoon. We love Colorado. We love the mountains. We love fishing. We love hiking. You can actually see snow in the summer. We love to ski in the winter. So Colorado would be we visit there every year, kind of vacation place. I long for the mountains. And then a place I want to visit. So this was I celebrated my 19th wedding anniversary this year, and we moved. So next year's 20. I really want for my 20th wedding anniversary to go to Banff, Canada. I want to go to Banff.
Oh my goodness
Banff is
gracious.
beautiful. If our listeners are not familiar, Marianne and her husband first told me about Banff. First time I heard about it a couple of years ago, and I got on my phone, Googled it, and it is the most beautiful setting you can imagine. The lake, the lodge. Tell us about Banff.
I have a friend who went last summer and she brought back her family photos, family vacation photos. And you guys, it stirs my heart toward Creator God. It
They
is
don't even look real.
it is incredible. And she saw bears and moose in their live environment. I want to see a bear. I just want to see a bear, not at a zoo. I want to see a bear crossing a lake or near woods. I want to go to Banff. It is incredible. The color of the water is unlike anything you will have ever seen in your life. The mountains are huge, which remind us of who and how big God is. Banff is where I'm going for 20 years. Stay tuned so I can tell each of you about it.
That's right. We're going to debrief when all of this travel restrictions over and Canada lets you in without a 2-week quarantine. That's funny. That's awesome. Well, for me, Josh, I think favorite places. My wife and I have differing ideas of favorite places. I do love the mountains. I love places of history. She loves the beach, the coastline, the sand. We argue about it, and I pack the bags and we go to the beach. And so, I travel a lot for my job. And so when we go on trips for family, I always want her to be able to pick where we go to. I'm always out and about. So it's interesting, though, having said that, we're getting ready to get away the end of September, first part of October, because we're about to get a new puppy. And we know that's going to tie us down for a little bit and get into a whole new rhythm. I said, we need to get away for a week before we get this puppy. And we don't have separation anxiety with the puppy, and the training stays intact in those areas. And I gave her the choice. Where does she want to go? And I was thinking she's definitely going to pick beach, but she wants to go see fall foliage. So we're mapping out potential places for fall foliage because that's the perfect time for it. Yeah. Now, if I could pick anywhere I wanted to go right now, though, I would go to Europe. And I would spend at least a week to 8 days there and just take train rides all over. I want to visit Athens. I want to visit Rome and Venice. I want to head up to Bulgaria. I want to head up to Auschwitz and see the gas chamber and the history there. And I'd love to make it up to Norway. And I would just zip around on trains. I'd be in a different country every day. And I still, even doing that, I wouldn't hit but a fraction of Europe. There's so many countries and so many things to see. What about you, Josh?
Well, as Ronnie Van Zant would say, I'm a simple kind of man. I wouldn't say that much, but I love, as far as places I've been, I'm a Disney guy. Like my wife and I, we absolutely love it. It is truly the most magical place on earth for us. I mean, of course she did, like, we plan our outfits to match the park and like custom shirts, the whole 9 yards. We love us some Disney. And so that is the place that we have been. We go maybe once every other year, once a year if we can. But the place that I haven't been, it's so funny, Marianne, there are so many parallels in our lives. We just celebrated 19 years this past year. We are talking about our 20-year trip, and Banff and Bora Bora are the two places that we've talked about. Yes. And I've only seen pictures of both, but like you said, it's breathtaking. Just the pictures and having friends that have been to Banff and seeing the pictures, it looks like they're photoshopped in. Like, I just want to see that. But Bora Bora would not be bad. Sometimes after a long, hard day, we will be laying down before we go to sleep at night, and we'll close our eyes and she'll go, "Where are we?" And she'll say, "Banff." And I'll be like, "Alexa, please play rushing water sound effects." And we'll just lay there and talk about it. Or Bora Bora, and we'll like have the ocean waves going and we'll just talk about it. So
love that.
That's what we do.
You obviously don't have an Alexa close by, because I expected her to reply immediately when you said that.
I thought about it, and I'm thinking, I hope they don't have one.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, unfortunately, we do not get to travel as much right now with all this going on. And we being stuck at home is really, really difficult. I am an introvert, and yet I miss the social aspect of all that is going on. I miss being in a restaurant across from colleagues at work and friends from life group and so forth. It's just frustrating to be in right now. And I wanted to mention this before we get into our interview with Jefferson. But here's the thing: is everybody out there's writing what are going to be the permanent changes or what's the new normals, and everybody has different predictions of how will the church be forever altered by this major pandemic. And I don't want us to get into prophesying or whatever, but I do want to share with you one help that we're doing for churches and ministry leaders out there. And it's something we call the D6 at-home bundles. And what we're offering, and the church can buy it or the family can buy it, it does not matter. But you can look at it and go, okay, let me get a D6 devotional magazine for each of my family members. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 family members, everybody gets their own age-appropriate magazine. And it's got fun articles in it, fun to-do items, connection points across the family. And the really cool part is every day there's family alignment. So you're all reading through the same portions of scripture, setting up for just natural conversations. And you go, man, I don't know how I would handle that. Well, here's the cool thing. For moms and dads, we give you conversation starters in your magazine, so you don't even have to think this up. And then what we suggest that you do is that you pick out a teacher's book based upon the average age of your kids. So you put them together, and if you've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, maybe you get one that's right in between them, and mom and dad, or maybe you're a single parent, you just take that teacher's book and the material that comes with it, and the teacher's portion is all digital. So you can use as little of it or as much of it as you like. But once a week, just sit down and talk through that lesson. You don't have to be a formal teacher or do anything like 30 minutes. It could be a 10-minute talk. It could be a 15. Just see what happens. But you get to step up and really lead your family through this, because after all, the family is the original small group. And so we're offering these at-home bundles because, Josh, I don't know how it is for your church, Marianne, y'all's church, but we're finding the research is showing people are just fatigued with online visuals, and the numbers have dropped off, and they desperately desire the social. Well, until we can get back to that, and I would suggest that this could stick. This could be a fun practice way beyond COVID for moms and dads to be doing this at home. And we don't charge any shipping for it. If a church orders this, we'll drop ship to every family their individual bundles. Or if a family wants to order it, they can order it direct. And it's all for about the same price as a meal at Chick-fil-A, just a single meal. And yet this is going to last you 3 months.
I wanted to add to what you're saying, Ron. As a mom, I hear lots of moms talking about resources to help discipleship be made easy. And I just want to say to the moms out there, those of you moms that are now homeschooling and there's been a pivot shift in what school and what your day looks like, guys, this is where it's at. This is discipleship made easy for you guys at home. This helps the family come around the table and come around God's word, which leads right into what Jefferson is passionate about in his own, in the interview we're about to listen to. But moms out there, this is exactly what I'm hearing my mom friends say they need. So give it a try. It is a simple way to gather your family and come around God's word together.
That's right. And these magazines have dates in it to keep you aligned. And the next one begins the first week of September. So now's the perfect time to order.
Yes.
All right. If you want to order, you can get on the Randall House website. You will need to call because you're going to have to customize these. So you can call our 800 number at 800-877-7030. Sorry to give out a phone number in that way, but this isn't one of those things that you as a church can go out there and go, because you don't know which devotional each of your family members need. And so you just need to talk them through them. It's a special, it's discounted off the retail price, and we actually toss in some free stuff when you order that. Well, I tell you what, when we come back from the break, we'll get into the Jefferson interview. And as Marianne said, he's going to hit some of these incredible areas, and we'll pick it up right on the other side.
Are you looking for a way to equip families to do discipleship in their own homes? D6 Everyday offers a new at-home bundle option, so you can reach families where they are. The same great D6 Everyday resources now bundled to fit your family. D6 Everyday at-home bundles are a great way to promote discipleship at home, especially during COVID-19 restrictions. Many churches and small groups are not gathering for worship or discipleship training, but you can resource them with teaching helps for the parents and devotion magazines for every member of the family, or about the cost of a Chick-fil-A meal. For more information, visit d6everyday.com.
Jefferson Bethke came on the scene like out of nowhere with a viral video, a spoken word poem called Jesus Over Religion. It has over 60 million views on YouTube. He and his wife, Alyssa, get this, they live in Maui.
We do. Suffering
Hawaii.
for the Lord.
So you're rolling to Orlando. We're all excited. You're like, downgrade,
exactly, yeah. But it
downgrade.
Is fun. Mickey lives here.
with their 3 children and their dog, Aslan, great name. They write books, host a podcast, and make a few other things on the internet that we'll be talking about during our interview. And they're passionate, hopefully and obviously, about Jesus and telling others about him as well. Man, welcome, man.
Hey,
Glad
thanks
to
so
have
much.
you.
I'm excited to be here. And you're right. Orlando's not a downgrade. It's just a different grade, right?
Well, I mean, hey, you got palm trees everywhere in your life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and there's no beach here, but it's awesome.
Like Hawaii, tell me.
So it's not as random as it sounds, first of all. Okay. Some people are like, did they just move to Hawaii randomly? No, so my wife, we both grew up in Washington State. I'm a Tacoma guy, if people know, kind of south of Seattle. Alyssa was a smaller town around there. And she took an internship at a church in Maui, probably 2009, just kind of fell in love with it, fell in love with the community, the people, etc. But then it was only a 2-year kind of commitment, came back, then we got married, started having kids, and then I do work for the internet, more or less, so we can kind of work from anywhere. So we said, like, hey, where do we want to raise a family? And then that's when she said, hey, I got roots here, I love it there, let's go there. So that's how it happened. But we do love it. It is awesome, and it is a fun place to raise a family.
Yeah. It's kind of, you need to put an online guide on how to afford living in
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
That part's brutal. I mean, California's no different, New York's no different, but I mean, you're talking, like this is what's crazy. Some of our friends just moved into a house, this is random, but just gives context, into a neighborhood where it was subsidized, like government low-income housing. But I mean, they're still nice homes. They look nice, they're brand new, but the government subsidized them, and the baseline of home cost was $350,000 to $500,000. And so it's like...
That's what the ghetto looks like.
Yes, and the minute you move in, you contractually can't sell it for 10 years, because the minute you move in, it's like worth like $800,000.
Oh, my gosh,
so you have to like stay in it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So there is some cons to living there.
All right, so you had this viral video, 60 million views. There's a story behind it that I've got to hear. I want to, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen the video but don't know the story behind it.
Yeah, it's the contextual point, I think, for us and what we do. It feels forever ago now. I think that's 7 or 8 years ago now. But essentially, all that really was a spoken word I wrote for when I was a student at a non-Christian college in Portland, Oregon. That I wanted to recite at an open mic. There was an open mic. People were like, I wanted to kind of reach people for Jesus and kind of do something more culturally engaging out in front of them, get in front of people. And the open mic once a month was always attended by a lot of people. You could do something kind of artistic, music, poems, etc. So I wrote that. And contextually for that audience, because that audience, I think, has the Northwest, highly de-churched, or non-churched at all, kind of has that context. So that's where it came from. So it wasn't meant to be this thing. It wasn't meant to be an internet thing. I just kind of was, me and my friend were bored 6 months after I did it, and we're like, did what millennials do. So we made a video, but we thought our moms and friends would see it, and then it went crazy.
And so your college buddies filmed it, right?
Yeah. No, he was like, I think the guy who filmed it. Company? Yeah, I was 22, and then it was my friend. I think it was 19 at the time. Yeah, and that was it. That was it, just us two. And
you upload it, and then
and just went crazy.
Talk to me about what happened after.
Yeah, so then it was obviously surreal. I wasn't expecting it. But what it did do is, it was cool, is it kind of gave an opportunity. It gave kind of this opening of like, man, do I love doing this stuff? And I was actually going to college to be a political, I was majoring in political science, wanted to be a social studies or a history or a government high school teacher. So what's funny is how the Lord moves is like he's kind of used the same heart, but just like took it out of the school system and now just to the internet, and then obviously a little bit more religious or, not religious, but, Jesus oriented. And so, so that's kind of what happened. It was crazy, but tried to steward it and good mentors in our lives that helped us. And now it just feels pretty normal. But I've been writing books and doing internet stuff for 7 years.
It just kind of launched you.
Yeah.
You had no plan. You're just all of a sudden now an influencer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is an overused word.
No, but it's the word. And I actually, I dislike that word, but I also like that word because I think it's actually true to form in the fact that, like, if you are an influencer, you have influence, right? And like, and I think the only reason I don't like it is because I think we kind of make it a subset of people. When I think I like that word of like everyone is one. Everyone is technically an influencer because you have an ability through your life to influence in your middle school, in your high school, in your job, if you're older, if you're younger, whatever, right? So I agree, but I just think, that's one thing I always tell people to think about. Is like, man, who are you influencing people? You are, and how and why, you know?
And you build bridges in and out. Like I saw you, I listened to your podcast with Lewis Howes.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
How are you making those kind of connections?
Totally. I mean, I do care and have a bent towards that domain, if you want to call it, or just like, outside of the traditional church space. So, and I think our stuff lends itself there, so I don't really try super hard. I just think I try to speak in really plain language, and I try to just talk about things that people are really thinking about, and somehow that tends to keep me in both spaces. So, but I'm not trying to say I'm intentional with it, but I'm also not trying to actively seek it. It's just like I am trying to be thoughtful to not get super. I think sometimes we get really, our language just turns really insider, right? Insider language, insider things, and it's like if the scriptures were written to a very, very normal group of people, right? They're high text now in some sense because we need scholarship to understand a lot of it, but obviously in the first century that wasn't that, and so I just think we have to remember that, you know, in all of our places we're in culture.
And you've kind of landed in the family space, which kind of helps us get you to why you're here at D6. Yeah. You married, and you and your wife have jeffandalissa.com.
Yep.
You guys have a podcast. And by the way, go there because they have a ton of free resources that they offer. Obviously, both of you have written books. And I want our listeners to check that out for sure. But you have a really cool, I want to make sure we get this. You have a thing called Homeroom, which is basically a place where you can be encouraged in your marriage.
Totally. So, I'll start higher than that. So, I would say I do a lot of things on the internet, do a lot of different ways it turns out. The main job I like to say we do is an organization or ministry that's called Family Teams. And that's kind of you could call it a division or a part of what me and Alyssa do, but it's with some mentors of ours too, so it's not just us. But Family Teams, and the whole premise of that is kind of telling people, we kind of have this phrase of like opting out of the Western individual family experiment and opting into building a multi-generational family team on mission, which we kind of say are the two paradigms you usually fall in, highly individualistic or more of like a team-centered dynamic. And even Christians, I think, fall into that individualistic family mindset, even when they're like healthy, love the Lord, and more moral. We're still very individualistic and very Western in our model. When the scriptures is a little bit more of a multi-generational family team. You see this in Genesis, you see this all throughout when you kind of zoom out. So that's kind of our main thing, our focus. And one of the primary tools, we have books there, we got podcasts there, we have everything, live events, we go to Israel, we just do everything. Anything you can think of, we do it to try to equip people there at all different places. But one of the main ones we do is called Homeroom. And what that program is we call it a monthly family and marriage kind of membership. And what it is, we try to basically concentrate on, when you say yes to being a family team, when you kind of lean more into God's design, there's not a lot of tools out in the world, right? There's not a lot of tools, and even the Christian ones, in my opinion, tend to go very individualistic. So they're not leaning into the paradigm difference. And so then we say, okay, well then you need new tools, right? You need so a lot of people say yes to being a family team when they're convinced and they understand the paradigm shift, but then their toolless, their toolbox is empty. So Homeroom is our way to say, okay, every month we're going to give you a tool, right? We're going to give you a tool that actually cultivates a family team. And then 2,000 of us, I think we're about 2,000 strong now. There's curriculum, there's kind of weekly different ways we do this. We roll it out and we all work on it together. But then the main thing is the community, where then it's kind of like a curriculum online while in a community, right? That's basically the best way to explain it. So I think last month we did family meetings. That was a really fun month with the community of like, how do you integrate meeting as a family, right? Treating family almost like a business, having board meetings, having meetings with the employees, your children, coaches meetings, all these different things. We've had a month on that. We've had a month on rhythms, how to live in a series of 7 days and how to make that flourish in your family, communication. You can just go on and on, but every month is a different tool and it's fun. I love it. And it's like the hotbed of seeing people interact and engage and how their family's doing, and I love it.
And I mean, obviously you were kind of thrown out into the public eye, but as soon as you, as a young married man, start offering help with marriage, I know your mentors are the main source of that help, but that's got to put a lot of pressure
Totally. But
because I mean, the moment you and your wife have like a yelling fight at each other, now all of a sudden you're like, well, what am I doing?
Totally. Well, first of all, we shouldn't be offering a ton of help on marriage and family at this stage in our life. And thankfully, like I said, we're kind of are and we aren't. Like I get like, so family teams is primarily our mentors who they've been married 20 plus years. They actually have been writing and thinking and are actually like thought leaders on family for 2 decades. So that's not even like and then just amazing family, 2 adult kids, 5 kids total. It's just awesome. And they really mentored us and changed and transformed our life with just that kind of that paradigm shift over like the last 7 years. And basically what happened is we got pushed into this, because then basically what happened is I would share about it in kind of breadcrumb ways on the internet, and people would always be on Instagram and Facebook and saying like, oh, tell me more. What about this? Or why do you do that? That's really different. Or, and I just felt kind of like, oh, I'm not the source. I can't really just like, and so then what happened is we said, hey, let's bring this on the internet. Let's make it a little bit more holistic. So that's kind of how it happened. So it kind of the way it plays out is like, we're almost the guinea pig and the mentee, and they're the mentors. And we kind of like, and what's cool too is it's different stages. So even back to homeroom, we have people who have been married 3-4 decades in there. We have some grandparents in there, because it concentrates on being multi-generational, and there's so much things that hit them well. But then also we obviously talk about and share how this plays out with like young kids and toddlers. So the dynamic is really, really fun. And that's, I think, plays out for sure.
So you set it up perfectly then. If you're the guinea pig, you're free to mess up.
Yes.
You're like, I'll help you with your marriages, and then I'll also be,
trying to figure it out too.
I love that.
Exactly.
I love that. And yes, you have written a book called To Hell with Hustle, which we were just talking about. It's a really fun title for you.
Well, first of all,
it's your way to kind of slip in a curse
right?
word.
Well,
right?
no, I know exactly. I will give a couple caveats there, because here's why. First of all, my wife picked that title, which if anyone follows us online, she's like the sweetest, like a 90-year-old grandma in like a 30-year-old body, like.
I saw a video of her with a sewing machine.
Yes, it's just hilarious that she thought of that title, because that it's probably the first and last time she's ever said a title like that. Second of all, and I talk about this in the intro of the book. It's not us trying to be trite. It is funny, and it is kind of a punchy title, but it really is literal. Of like, man, there's this. The whole premise of the book is that, man, I think millennial generation specifically, but Western American entirely, is really kind of succumbing, addicted, and hypnotized by this hustle mentality, this do more, be more, try more, just everything, this spirit of just like nothing's ever good enough, and you have to go faster, right? And to me, Jesus is the antithesis of that. He's never in a hurry, right? He's always deeply intentional. He seemed to, I think more than 60% or something of his miracles were miracles of interruption, meaning like he wasn't trying or planning to do that. Someone tapped on his shoulder and said, hey, and then he opened to the moment and actually addressed it. We don't have time or ability to do that with our schedules, right? Or with our priorities, or we just pass by it. So Jesus is just the very antithesis to hustle, and I've realized a lot of us have let that even seep into our Christianity, and it's the death nail. It's detrimental. It kills our spiritual life. The sense of hustle and hurry is almost like a corrosive acid on our souls, that even if we're living and following Jesus, it's killing us, right? No peace, no joy, no depth, no anchoring. And so then that title is not being trite, but it's actually like, if it's not from Jesus, there can only be one other place it's from, right? And I think it is from the evil one. I think distraction, busyness, hurry is actually one of his primary tools. And so that's what the book talks about. It's a fun book. I'm really, really excited for it. And yeah, it's weird to kind of say you have favorite kids, but I'm like that with books, where it's like, it's weird to say you have favorite books, but this one is probably my favorite. I'm really stoked on it.
So ministers make up the base of our audience. They are in that hustle trap a lot. So what are some words of encouragement towards them specifically?
Yeah, I don't think there's any worse place in the Christian world than ministry, because you're just so much is demanded of you, right? I would say, and not even trying to sell the book, I would just read the book, because I think it can really hit the heart to ministry people, because there's a whole section and chapter on how to say no, right? From a holy perspective, right? Like do you actually have permission to say no at any time? It seemed like Jesus did, right? Mm-hmm. It seemed like for him to have really good yeses, he had to say no very particularly and in certain moments, right? And I don't think a lot of ministers have that ability, or I don't see it very well, of really, really hard, strict boundaries. For one thing I would say, and there's a whole chapter on this in the book, is Sabbath, man, like a real Sabbath, right? Not Sabbath of like, I just interpret that as meaning like vegging out, watching football, and resting. No, like an actual day of delight, right? A day once every 7 days that God wired into the universe in Genesis, and clearly in the Jewish tradition they do this beautifully, of feasting, of a meal, of a mini Christmas, a mini Thanksgiving, where you actually enter in to the goodness of God, invite him to the table, turn your phone off for 24 hours, or rest for 24 hours, or do whatever it does to cease and celebrate. We light 2 candles in our family on Friday night to start Sabbath with a big fun dinner, and those 2 candles, the kids kind of know, is cease and celebrate. Those are the 2, you put those together, and it's going to be a really, really beautiful, honoring, worshipful, rhythmic experience. And I think that's another one, and that's hard for ministers, right? Because sometimes they're, and Sunday's a work day, so like I would say, when's your off day, right? Friday night or Monday, but finding out some type of weekly rhythmic cadence of work and rest, and deep rest, right? Not like I'm burnt out rest, but like the rest of God, the delight of God. Because true rest is so close to like delight and partying. That's what's funny, right? We think rest is like what I said, being vegging out or doing yard work or whatever. But it really is very close in scriptures to like a party. That's true rest, because it's filling, right? And so I would say, man, putting that in your weeks is huge. And so that's one other thing I would say.
Cease and celebrate. I will carry that with me, my friend. Thank you. All right, one last thing. You are leading a session while you're here.
Oh, yeah?
And I'm going to read the session description because I just think it's fabulous. It's a little long, but I want you to hear it because I want you to kind of give me your synopsis of it. Most families, by default, fall into the trap of the West by seeing family as nothing more than a springboard for the individual success of each family member. But we think Scripture points to a greater mission, which is living as a multi-generational family team on mission. This session, we will walk through the narrative found in Scripture to show this, as well as the practicalities of how this might make a family come alive. You've talked a little bit about this. I want you to just nail it home one more time because it sounds like the heart of where you're coming from.
It is. And yeah, I mentioned it, but I'll unpack it some more. So I think what we don't realize the water we're swimming in the West, which has brought us deep blessing, so let's recognize that, is we put the individual as one of the highest paramount things, right? The freedom and the unhindered ability of that individual to succeed is the highest value in the West, right? And that has brought good. That has brought immense good. That's how we got the level of Republican democracy we have. That's how we got the level of individual rights and freedom and personal integrity, all these different things that we have. But I think the dark side of that is that it's at the expense of community or teams. And Scripture has so much more to say there that we've kind of is our blind spot, right? And so you read Genesis, and it seems to me like I think we have to ask ourselves this question: what was God's idea or here's another way to put it. God had a problem, right? So if you think of Genesis, there's kind of this primordial chaos. Then he creates Eden, but Eden is not the whole earth. Eden is just like this prototype. The rest of the earth is still untamed. And of course he could have solved that problem himself. He could have snapped his fingers, whatever. But he seems to want to spill over into creating a solution that's outside of himself. And so what is that? How does he do that? How does he solve the solution of like going and subduing the rest of the earth, right? Because he's got the prototype, and the rest of the earth needs to look like that. It needs to be subdued, it needs to be ordered, it needs to be fruitful and multiplied. How does he do that? Does he create a board of directors? No. Does he create an app? No. Does he create, a nonprofit? No. Now, if we had that same problem today, we would pick those things. Right? We would pick a board of directors, we would make an app, we would get some, venture capital, whatever it takes. We would say, oh yeah, if we have this little prototype of Eden and we need to make the rest of the world look like this, how would we solve that? We would do this. Or we'd try to find one really, 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 really powerful, charismatic individual, right? God has the very weird solution. His solution is male plus female, right? So there's the team aspect that I talk about, family teams. Then he says, and it's going to take a really, really long time, so he makes it multi-generational. He says, be fruitful and multiply. So you're not going to be able to do it in one generation. This job is so big, it's going to take tons of generations, right? And then I've already mentioned the mission, which is go out and subdue the earth, reign and rule, and make order out of chaos. So it's a multi-generational family team on mission. Like this is clearly very loud in Genesis, and I think because of our worldview, we're kind of blinded on that. And it's not the only way, but one of God's primary vehicles to bring blessing into the world. But that team aspect, teams are different than individuals, right? Like the Golden State Warriors or the New England Patriots, any team you can think of would be cancerous if they actually lived and believed how we believe about Western families, right? That the individual succeeding is the most important thing, right? We would actually think that's terrible. And they would probably implode. And that's usually when those dynasties do. How do teams succeed the best? They succeed when each individual actually is serving the team. Now, not in the sense of like, some people will say like, oh, does that mean you're squashing the team, or does that mean you're squashing the individual or whatever? It's like, no, that's fascism. That's not the New England Patriots, right? Here's another way to put it. The individual actually flourishes best in the subservient context of a team. Right? And Tom Brady is the best Tom Brady, and he is who we know he is because he was able to play in the context of a team, right? And so I just think that's kind of what we talk about. That's the whole premise of family teams. There's a million more things I could say on that, but sure. that is that heartbeat, and that is that center.
Wonderful synopsis, though, and a really unique bent that I think is the D6 family is going to love. So
I'm
thank
excited.
you for being here and being with us and sharing with us. Hey, Jefferson Bethke is who we've been listening to, and thank you for spending some time. You can find him online at Jeff and Alyssa, ALYSSA.com.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Wow, you guys, that was a powerful, powerful interview. And I just love Jefferson's passion. I love his heart for family teams and multi generation team on mission. Those were his words, creating a multi gen team on mission. And I just love that. Build your family to change the world. That's exactly what I want to do. That's what I want to be about. Is I want to build a family that changes the world. I love your thoughts on what Jefferson had to say in his interview about changing the world through family.
Well, as a busy pastor who, as he just spoke about, falling victim to the hustle and do more mentality, I love when he spoke of Jesus's no and the importance of Sabbath and how we as pastors can even fall victim to that and our families suffer. So anytime somebody gives me permission to tell somebody no and to just relax and breathe, that's one of my, the big benefits. One of the first things I felt God teaching me through this entire COVID season that we've been going through, that the importance of slowing down and taking that rest and ceasing and celebrating what God has done, and then moving on to the next thing instead of just, okay, that's it. And I love the importance of just stopping to celebrate and look back at what God had done and rest for the next season or whatever he has for you in the future.
Some of the best pieces of advice I ever got going into college was a friend of mine looked me in the face and said, Marianne, you've got to learn to say no to the good things and yes to the God things. And in ministry, we think those can get really muddy. And so I've got to always pray about, sometimes we've got to say no to the good things and yes to the God things. Good things may mean we've got to say no to some things at the church so that it opens itself up to other people to their yes. And so our no's open up yeses for other people to use their gifting. And so I'm just always challenged by those words, no to the good things and yes to the God things.
That is awesome. And I'm going to echo what Josh said too along those lines. There were two things that jumped out at me through his time in the interview, the cease and celebrate, which Josh covered. And then he used another phrase that I really liked, weekly rhythmic cadences. And in that, when we think about that, he's talking routines, staying in routines. And to stay in a routine, you have to be disciplined. And then discipline feeds into, how would we say yes to the God things and no to the good things? The discipline feeds into, how do we get into scripture every day, praying with our families, connecting with God daily. And so discipline leads to discipleship. So I love the weekly rhythmic cadences.
I like one of the things he said, no peace equals no joy equals no depth.
Yes.
Those are powerful words. No peace, which comes from rhythm and fighting for rest, equals no joy, which we know comes from Jesus and our time with him, equals no depth. Those are some powerful words as we're tracking through intimacy with the Almighty.
Yes.
No peace equals no joy equals no depth. And the Lord shifted the whole world right now. I mean, the world has changed, rhythm has changed, time has changed for everyone. And so we have more time. For some of us, we have more time than we've ever had in our lives. And so we do have an opportunity to maximize good God moments in extra time.
We do. We're all busier in different ways, but when it comes to our personal time, we don't have places to go out in the evenings. And if you have at any point in your life said, man, I'm so busy, I just keep forgetting about getting into the Word. I'm so busy, I just forget to pause and pray with my kids. There's no excuse during this time if that's the case, because we do have those moments, we do have those opportunities, and we just got to find those rhythms and those cadence. We got to, as Josh said, cease, and as Marianne said earlier, go find those God moments. And I'll tell you, if you're listening, your first God moment is connecting with your family. If you've not done that before, look them in the eye and say, hey, we're going to give this a try. It's going to be awkward in the beginning, but it's okay. We're going to do this because we love you, and step into that role.
Well, I think that has been one of the biggest blessings of our current situation is it is causing families to have to take ownership of the discipleship of their family and their children as they walk this out, because they, in many cases can't go to church. And I think it's a great way, well, not a great way, but that is one of the blessings hidden in the midst of all this, this challenging season, is that it is causing families to come back together and to really reevaluate what is important and finding those moments at home. And, one of the things we did is start taking walks after dinner when this whole thing, hit, and passing neighbors that we'd never seen before, and the community that was being built within our own community. It's funny that it took that pandemic for that to happen and for us to connect with people that have lived down the street from us. But it's been kind of beautiful that we spend that time with God, as a family, and unhurried or interrupted, because there was nowhere else to go.
That's for sure. It is incredible time. And I'm thankful for Jefferson's admonition to us. And I'm ready to get away for sure. So maybe we'll make it to those dream vacation spots sometime soon and in a safe manner. And until next week, when we can come back together, we're going to have Byron Reagans from David C. Cook on with us, and looking forward to being with him. Thanks, Marianne. Thanks, Josh. We'll see you guys next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.